Hi, I'm Abi Elphinstone and I'm in the brilliant Portobello bookshop, and for Independent Bookshop Week I'm going to read you a little bit of my brand new book, The Crackledawn Dragon. So here we go. Chapter 1. Zebedee Bolt was good at running away from home. He'd done it enough times after all, and not the half-hearted wandering off that involves shouting at your parents, storming to the bottom of the garden, then slinking back in time for tea. When Zeb ran, he crossed bridges and raced through unfamiliar parks, safe in the knowledge that he had memorized all the latest tricks from the Tank, a survival expert with his own TV show who did deeply uncomfortable things like drink his own sweat and make rescue robes out of his own beard hair. But Zeb was always discovered in the end, and this was because he found it almost impossible to rein in the outbursts. These episodes came upon him without warning and consisted of an embarrassing amount of sobbing on street corners. By the time he got a grip on himself, various grown-ups were usually stepping in to bring his getaway to a close. You see, Zeb wanted to be tough. He longed to be like the Tank, who could escape any situation, like surviving weeks in the wild on a diet of grasshoppers or emerging from a tussle with a bear with nothing but a bit of light bruising. But when you've got no money, a limited supply of food, and no friends to fall back on if things go wrong, it's a bit harder to remain upbeat. So, while Zeb's getaways always started well, it wasn't long before the fear and panic kicked in. Where really was he running to? What hope was there for an 11-year-old boy alone in New York? Who actually cared about what happened to him? Not that he ever talked about his feelings to the grown-ups who found him, the social worker in charge of him, or the foster families he'd lived with, because talking meant trusting, and trusting other people had gone out of the window years ago for Zeb. Tonight would be different, though. Tonight he had remembered biscuits, and he had made a solemn vow in front of the mirror that he wouldn't burst into tears and get found, not even when it got dark or a little bit scary. Because Zeb had had enough of being passed around people's homes like an unwanted package, enough of hearing the same things whispered about him by the foster families he'd known. He's so quiet. Why does he never smile? Is he always this moody? And overheard this morning from foster parents Joyce and Gerald Orderly Q of 56 Right Angle Row, Manhattan, while on the phone to his social worker. We've had him for 6 months now, and it's simply not working. He doesn't smile, he doesn't laugh, he barely even talks. And he spends so much time shut away in his bedroom, he's almost certainly plotting something dreadful. So, before he poisons us in our sleep, or worse, sprays graffiti over the sitting room, we'd very much like to hand him back. Their words jostled in Zeb's ears as he ran over Brooklyn Bridge. It was always the same thing. He was never what foster families wanted. And while the welfare agency in charge of him had placed dozens of other children in loving homes, those, like Zeb, under the care of social worker Derek Dunce, hadn't had the same luck. Derek Dunce was a buffoon of a grown-up, who was capable of messing up even the simplest of things, like walking down a corridor. Finding loving families to nurture and understand vulnerable children was completely beyond him. So, like a disappointing meal in a restaurant or a faulty coat from the department store, Zeb was always sent back to the welfare agency in the end. Zeb had crept out of number 56 Right Angle Row for good over an hour ago, as soon as he'd gobbled down his dinner and finished talking to himself in the mirror. Now he was on the run, and though he wasn't sure where he was running to, he kept going, even as the dark settled in and the city lights began to glitter. He pulled the hood of his jacket up, partly because he'd seen the Tank do this once before, moments before facing down a lion, and partly as a precaution. If the orderly cues had sounded the alarm and the police were out looking for an 11-year-old boy with blonde hair, green eyes, and a fondness for hysterical crying, Zeb wanted to be disguised. He turned off the bridge and hurried into the heart of Brooklyn. The place was buzzing. People poured in and out of restaurants, music sailed through open windows, and taxis honked. For a second, Zeb allowed himself to wonder what belonging to a neighbourhood like this, with friends and family all around him, would be like. Bike rides with a mum and dad in the park? Weekend cinema trips with friends from school? Sleepovers at a neighbour's house? A longing grew inside Zeb, and with it, a lump in his throat. The first sign of an outburst. He swallowed it down, then did what the Tank did when the going got tough, some jaw-clenching followed by a grunt. Instantly, he felt better. As he made his way on through the crowds, he reminded himself that dreaming up family and friends was pointless, because you could never count on other people, not when they let you down time and time again. Humans, Zeb had come to learn, were a bit like vegetables. They claimed to be full of all sorts of good things, but ultimately they were pretty disappointing.